I know there's been some talk in the vinyl community about, some of the younger folks getting involved in collecting albums, feeling victimized or criticized overly or bullied from some of us old white guys, that talk about records and stereos and things like that. I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope that's not a very prevalent attitude among the vinyl community. I don't think it is, but if you feel like somebody's not been treating you right, you've got every right to express your displeasure. So this is kind of a counter to that. I'd like to show some of our young folks, especially just getting into vinyl, how you can get into it inexpensively and have a system that'll work for you for a long time on a limited budget. So the first thing, you see some of the inexpensive record players being offered at the big box stores like Target and Walmart and things like that, and that's probably a good starting point for a lot of people. But as you discover that maybe you've got a long-term interest in it, you probably want to invest in some equipment that will reproduce that sound a little better for you and maybe not damage your records in the long haul, as some of those real inexpensive record players may possibly do over a long period of time playing on them. So I'm gonna talk to you about one option that you might try instead of saying, I've looked at stereo equipment and it's just way too expensive for me. I'm a kid, or maybe I'm a working person on a very limited budget. I only have so much I can spend on things like this. So one option is to find old equipment. Now, if you're in your teens or early 20s, you can probably search around in some of your older family members' homes, and maybe they'll give you some equipment they have. If you've got grandparents in their 60s or 70s or even late 50s, they may well have vintage stereo equipment, including a turntable. So go that route if you can. Another is to check estate sales and thrift shops and used goods stores, charity thrifts, things like that, and see what you can find. Now, you'll be able to find lots of speakers. Speakers are everywhere, so you can probably find some pretty good speakers. It's a little more difficult to find a turntable and a receiver or amp. You go out in search of a receiver and a turntable. You may find one and then later find the other. And first thing I would advise you, don't pay too much for it. If you're finding it at a thrift shop or maybe a yard sale or a moving sale or something like that, try to get something. You should be able to get something for 10 to 40 bucks probably at a situation like that, a yard sale, thrift store. If you go to a record shop that sells vintage equipment, you're going to pay more because your expectation is going to be that they've already serviced it, they've checked it out, and everything works. So, you might pay $100 or $120 for something along those lines, or maybe even a little bit more depending on, the equipment that we're talking about. But for our purposes, we're trying to set ourselves up with a inexpensive but good quality stereo. So you want a receiver. You don't have to have a real high wattage receiver, watts per channel. This is a 35 watts per channel receiver here that I picked up at an estate sale, and I think I gave $20 for it. Here's a key. If you go to estate sales, normally what they'll do is they'll sell, it'll usually be a 2-day sale, Friday and Saturday or Saturday and Sunday. and sometimes there'll be 3-day sales. Well, anything that's not gone on the first day, oftentimes they will drop the price in half on the second day. Now, if you get there and you're a couple of hours away from them shutting down, from the estate sale ending, and there's still stuff there like a stereo, you should be able to get it for next to nothing, because normally the way those things work is that estate seller, that auctioneer or estate seller, we're talking about tag sales usually with these types of estate sales. Usually they've got contracted with somebody that says they'll come in for a set price, which is not a whole lot at all. And anything that hasn't sold at the estate sale, they'll pack it all up and leave with it. Like they're going to take the junk, in other words. This particular receiver and turntable, I saw it on a Friday. I liked it. And if memory serves me, this was a couple years ago, memory serves me, they wanted $40 for this and they wanted $30 for the turntable. I didn't want to pay that much for it. So I went home that evening, and the next morning I got up, and they were going to start back, say at 8 o'clock or something. I got there about 7:45. They opened the door and let people start coming back into the home. I walked in, it was still there. I said, I'll take this and this. It had been marked down to 20 and 15. Okay? Now, before I decided to buy it, though, the day before, I plugged it in and made sure the lights came on. I made sure I hooked the speakers up, made sure it would play through a speaker. They had some speakers there that I wasn't at all interested in. And I plugged this in and made sure the platter would turn. I didn't put a record on it or anything. It didn't do that much, okay? But, so I knew that, the platter will turn, so the motor runs. And I made sure this would fire up, okay? So when you get something like this at home, it's very simple. All you gotta do is go to a YouTube video, and you can look up how to service a stereo. Make sure it's unplugged. Take the top off of it. And look it over inside. It might be a little dusty. Be careful if you try to get the dust out, though. You can use one of those air cans and spray a little bit, but be careful. You don't want to mess up any of the stuff, transistors and things like that, all that sort of stuff, your technical stuff. If something like that goes wrong, then it's going to cost you a lot of money to get it fixed. You'll have to carry it to somebody that still works on that sort of stuff, and it won't be cheap. But 9 times out of 10, all you need is Detox at D5. This stuff right here, and I don't know what I paid. I don't know. I've had this for 3 or 4 years. Probably paid $8 for it or something like that. But it's Detox. Detox it. Because, not detox, not like going, it's a deox it. Oxidation. Because oxidation gets in and the connections get sketchy. So you got a receiver and you get lots of pops and crackles when you turn the volume, or the dials might not work quite right or anything. You open this up, and from the inside you spray this stuff in it. And you watch a video on YouTube. It'll show you exactly how to do it. It's not complicated at all, because I can do it. And then you work those knobs. You spray it, and then you work those knobs, turning them over and over and over again to get all that worked in. And oftentimes you put the lid back on that sucker. You hook it up to some speakers and put a turntable on, or turn the FM or AM radio on. I don't even have an antenna. I've got an antenna, but I only have the antenna hooked up for this because I never played a radio. So I don't even care if the radio plays on this one. So that might be another thing. If you get one of these and the phono setting works, but you may have trouble with the radio. If you're not going to play the radio, if you've got it for your turntable, it doesn't matter. Okay? So oftentimes you get that, and that's all you need to do. That's all I did to this. I wiped a little bit of dust off the inside. Not hardly anything. Just a little bit of dust off. And I sprayed it with the deoxit. And it works perfect. Perfect. Okay? Now, what is this? And so take a chance on spending $15 or $20 on something, and you may be able to get it working perfectly. Worst case scenario, it does, you can't, there's more that needs to be fixed than you have the capacity to do. You carry it to somebody that works on it and say, will you look at it and tell me if it's worth fixing? And he may say, it just needs a couple of things that are simple to him, and he might be able to fix it for $50 or something like that. And if he says, no, it'll cost, with labor and parts, it's going to be about $250. Then you say, okay, I don't need you to work on it then. And you're out $20. Okay? But when it works, hey, and oftentimes it does. Now, what exactly are these two? This is a Mitsubishi DAR11 stereo receiver, and it also says it's quartz frequency synthesizer. What that means, I have no idea. But quartz is good on a turntable. But that's what it says for the receiver. And notice it's digital. So we know this is around a 1981 or 82 because I read up, I looked it up, and the Mitsubishi, this model, was one of the first digital tuners. That's the radio inside the receiver, digital tuners. So they started appearing around 1981 or 82 and weren't really prevalent till about 83, 84, 85, somewhere in there. And this turntable is a Mitsubishi DP6, and it says it's a quartz lock automatic return turntable. Okay? So, and the quartz lock is a good thing. That it gives you more consistent rotations, regulated rotations, as I understand it. Anybody correct me if I'm wrong on that. It's automatic return, meaning only that you set the needle manually to start the record, but when it gets to the end, it'll return itself. It won't just sit there and turn and turn and turn. There was a problem with that, and I carried it to a guy I know that works on turntables. I needed a new cartridge for it, and the return wasn't working properly. It was simply a little broken ring there on the spindle that set up to make it return. He couldn't get a new part for it. He glued it back, and as long as it holds up, it'll keep returning. If it breaks again where the glue doesn't bond well enough, then it simply means when the record's over, I have to lift it up and put it back. No big deal. Okay. And it's a Gardo Black 2, I believe, cartridge that he put on here, which is about a $75 or $100 cartridge, which is, so, I probably spent $120 on this. He put the cartridge on, set it up, and sometimes you won't need a cartridge. The cartridges, don't let people fool you that you got to change out cartridges all the time. Oftentimes cartridges will last you 50 or more years. You might need to change. The stylus will wear out, but oftentimes if you got a good cartridge, you don't even need to change the cartridge on one you pick up sometime. But sometimes they're damaged if they've been sitting in a thrift shop or something like that, and you may need to change the stylus, especially. But this turntable works perfectly now. So I spent about maybe $100, counting getting a new cartridge for it, $120 plus $15, $135 got me this turntable. learned a lot since then. So a couple of years ago, I had him work on this, but it had been sitting in my basement. So I went and I purchased a couple of pretty inexpensive things on Amazon in order to, see, it's going to return just perfect. Set back down. On Amazon in order to just check and make sure my turntable's tracking correctly. And of course, one of the first things you want to do is you want to make sure when you pick up something like this, so much of this, if everything's working properly, you can do all this yourself easy, and there's always a YouTube video to show you how. Just watch a few of them. Don't necessarily go with the first one you see. Sometimes people don't know what they're talking about on there. Sometimes they go a little overboard, a little obsessive compulsive on there. So watch a few of them, 3 or 4 of them, and get a good idea. But the tone arm, you want to set the balance on the tone arm so that the tone arm is just sits without sitting down in its resting position and not without going up. You want it to just be level like that. You get there, you set the counter weight on the back, you get that point, and then you set the dial to 0. So now you've zeroed it out. Okay? And then you check the cartridge, and you can look it up if the cartridge, find out what cartridge you got. Just look on it, you'll figure it out, and find out the specs on it, what weight you need to apply to your for your cartridge, and then say in this case this is between 1 and 2 grams. So you set the dial. I set it at 1.5, and then you then the weight should be right. Now you can check that with just a little scale like this, and the scale will tell you how many grams of weight is being applied when you drop the needle down on the scale. And the scale will, and when I did this one, I had it set at 1.5, and it registered at 1.49 one time, and another time I did it, it registered at 1.50. So the scale is the setting is correct. Sometimes it might be off a little bit, but it is correct. And another thing you want to do is you want to make, and you would do this before you set the weight. You want to make sure that the cartridge is aligned correctly, so that it doesn't go in at any more of an angle than it has to as it works its way from the outer to the inner grooves. And you can pick one of these up. You can print one up. I think I paid $11 and some change for this, and I paid $15 for this, so less than $30 for those 2 items. And it's got 2 places on here. You set the needle down at the center, and you look at these, make sure it is square with the lines, from one end of the cartridge to the other, that it lines up square. It's not off, a little above the line on one side and a little below on the other. And then you move to the other one and do that, and you have to go back and forth until you get it aligned as close as you can to perfect. With both settings, and that will improve the sound of your turntable greatly, because it will become as close as it can to getting the needle coming down straight into the groove and not leaning and getting one channel or the other. Because see, each side of the groove, I used to think the bottom of the groove was where all the music was originated, but it's actually on the sides of the groove, left and right channel. And so if the needle comes in at an angle, it's going to get more of one channel and less of another, and you're going to have some sound issues. but this will enable you to get pretty darn close to a perfect little setup there. Okay, so those are a couple things. Once you've done, oh, one other thing. And the receiver's 35 watts, plenty of power. If you find a 20, a 15, a 25 watt, 35 watt receiver, that's all you need. You don't need 80 watts per channel or 100 watts per channel. That'll blow you out of the water. You don't need anything like that. So now you can find speakers anywhere. I had some Infinity bookshelf speakers that I was going to use, and they work great. But around the cones need to be refoamed, meaning where it was glued down, it's beginning to harden and become brittle and fall off, and you'll start getting a rattle in your speaker. All it is they need the cones refoamed. So I'm going to do that to those Infinities sometimes, but I've got some other speakers, actually they're Polk Audio RTI A3 bookshelf speakers that I've got running this system on now. But so that's a way you find you some vintage equipment. It may well be sitting in Granddaddy's basement on a nice shelf in the box it came in, and they put it up somewhere. Boy, you struck a gold mine when you find that. And it doesn't have to be Macintosh or one of the premier names. Mitsubishi, I didn't even know they made stereo equipment. I thought they made cars. They do both, evidently, or they did back then. And Japanese made, 1981, 82, something like this. And it's just fine equipment. It's really good equipment. You don't have to spend a lot of money, and you can have something really nice. Okay, well, I just wanted to show everybody what I've got here, and I've got this set up in the living room. I'm going to get some headphones. I've got some ordered. I don't usually use headphones, but because this is in the living room, I've got a little 9-foot cord to go on the headphones. I'm going to plug those in here. My wife can be in here watching the Lifetime Network, and I can be sitting here with her and spending time with my wife. But while she's watching the Lifetime Network, I'm listening to Charlie Bird or something else. Okay, everybody? I hope everybody's doing great. Remember, be kind to your neighbors, because we're all neighbors.